In this interview, we're going to meet Tom Erickson. Tom is an interaction designer and researcher, and he works for IBM. He works in the social computing group at Watson Lab in New York, and he's actually been working there since '97, and before that he worked 9 years for Apple. So he is an expert on social computing, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So Tom, in your essay Knowing the Particulars, you emphasize that one of Jane Jacobs' books on urban planning is incredibly inspiring to you when you're designing interactive systems. How do you use the insights of urban planning when you're designing interactive systems?
Jane Jacobs is one of my heroes and someone I don't think a lot of interaction design folks know about or at least think about. So Jane Jacobs is primarily known for her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, and the context in which it came out is in the US in the 1950s and 60s. There was a sort of totalist approach to urban design where it is called urban renewal, a lovely metaphor where you'd come into a quote-unquote blighted area of the city, meaning a lot of poor people lived there, and you'd just bulldoze everything down and you'd build nice new buildings. Maybe you'd even let some of those people come back, although often they had to go elsewhere because their lives were still going on. But anyway, you'd build a nice, orderly new development, and the thinking is that that would solve the problem. And of course it didn't. And Jacobs was very passionate about understanding and revealing what she called the order of the city. And she focused very much on interaction in the streets, in public. And she talked about how the life of the city is on its streets, and that you can tell a lot about the health of a city by the degree of interaction and the type of interaction you're seeing. And she had concepts like eyes on the street, so that the best guarantee of making a particular area safe is to have lots of people out on the street, because not because everybody is acting like a police person, but simply because everything is public and in view of one another, and so antisocial things are less likely to start and can be addressed if they do start, right? Not a panacea. Clearly bad things happen in public places, but if you approach the city not by looking at what the environment is like per se, but how people are interacting in the environment and how the environment is supporting that interaction or creating barriers to it, you can get a lot farther, right? And so this, really informs my thinking about social computing. What aspects of an online system enable certain types of behavior or block them? Can people in a system see what others are doing, right? And that seeing is important because it might make them curious, it might draw them in, it might give them ideas about how to behave, it might inform them about the norms that other people are acting in accord with. So they see that, gosh, nobody here is using insulting language. Oh, I guess I shouldn't either, right? There's no example of that, or somebody does and they're reprimanded by others, right? Mm-hmm. That's all of that really comes out of the way Jacobs approached cities. And the other thing I take from Jacobs, which is I think a lot more personal, one thing that she talked a lot about towards the end of Death and Life is the role of theory. And basically she said, well, theories are fine, it's an important way to think about things, but ultimately no theory is really going to capture the complexity and the particularity of a city or any kind of large interactive system. And so she talked a lot about, you always have to know the particulars. You have to get into the actual situation that you're designing for and understand it from the inside and see where the life of it is coming from, so that you can support and nurture that and strengthen those forces rather than screwing it up because you're trying to make it look beautiful according to some, the aesthetic standard of the decade.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I take from Jacobs.
Mm-hmm. In your essay, Knowing the Particulars, you mentioned some of Jane Jacobs' questions, which are essential to you when you're designing social computer systems. Can you explain to us, do you have any best practices which answers her questions? And the first one is, what features of an environment supports interaction among strangers?
Okay, so there are methods and there are practices. So the question of how you understand that is, again, it's ideally going into the environment and being a part of it and watching what happens,
mm-hmm.
right? And it varies depending on where you are, right? If you are out in a park and you see somebody walking a cute puppy, you can see, look, lots of people are stopping and talking to that person about the puppy. If you come to an academic conference, you may see the poster sessions are a great example where the whole thing is structured so that you have focused interactions among strangers, right? So you'll go up to the poster, there's the presenter, there's you, the presenter gives their little spiel, right? Everybody knows sort of what's supposed to happen. The poster presenter knows that they're not supposed to talk for an hour, right? So they probably have a little spiel. You listen, other people come up in the middle of the talk, they may ask questions, maybe you start talking with them, right? So by being in the situation, right, you come to understand that, and you can, think about, okay, how might I design either a better face-to-face poster session, right? The one I was in the other night, the room was too crowded,
mm-hmm.
and so it was hard to move about. So clearly, next time, more space.
Yeah. But
you might also think about how would I design an online poster session? And I don't know if we should go in this direction, but I just finished a study of a conference that IBM held in Second Life.
Mm-hmm.
And among other things, it actually had a poster session. And the poster session was probably the most successful aspect of the conference. I'm kind of a Second Life skeptic, but I was surprised at what I saw. Some things worked really well, some things worked badly, but one thing that worked well were the poster sessions, and we interviewed 30 people who participated in the conference, and people told us things like, I went into the poster session and I was walking around and I saw a poster with a crowd of people at it, and so I got curious and went over. Exactly the kind of thing that happens in face-to-face. Or I was walking along and I saw a poster and a presenter and nobody else was there and I felt sorry for her. So I went over, right? Again, a thing that might happen in face-to-face. Or I was in a crowd of people at a poster and somebody I knew came over, and then after we left, we got into an argument about whether the poster was good or not, right? So all of those are examples of pretty good analogs to face-to-face behavior. On the other hand, some things didn't work. So people talked about, well, I'd see a crowd of people over there talking, and I wanted to join them, but I'd approach them and people would pay no attention, right? In face-to-face, you walk up, you approach a group, and they notice you, and maybe they catch your eye and smile and move aside and make a little room for you to join, or maybe they catch your eye and then glance away, and that means it's private, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you go somewhere else, no big deal, unless you think they're talking about you, and then you have a conversation later. But in Second Life, that didn't happen because you don't have good peripheral vision. And so people would kind of approach a group and nobody would notice them. not because they were trying to be rude, just because they didn't have the peripheral vision. And you'd get close enough where you could hear the conversation. They were using spatialized audio very clearly, but again, nobody was noticing, so you felt like you were eavesdropping. And so that inhibited the kind of normal dynamic you get in face-to-face interaction.
Mm-hmm. And how could this be solved?
In this case, well, if you can figure out a way to give more peripheral vision in Second Life, that would be one solution. Another approach might be to create some kind of artificial cues that if somebody is close behind you, maybe there's flickering in your vision. A third one wouldn't solve the whole problem, but sound, in this particular implementation, the sound carried too far. So you could be quite a ways from a group and you could hear clearly what they were saying. Whereas instead of, if you had to approach very closely before you could hear, that would be better. And in fact, the posters were very well designed. That's a good question, because each poster had its booth, and the poster area was designed so that if you were outside a poster booth, you couldn't hear the conversation inside of it. So you could come right up close, but until you stepped into the booth, you couldn't hear the sound. And so that was one reason that posters in this study seemed more successful than they also had social gatherings where people would just cluster in groups. And that was where the problems with approaching groups really emerged, because you didn't have that group privacy.
Mm-hmm. Your next question, or Jane Jacobs' next question, which you are inspired by,
yes.
What attracts people to a place, and then what makes them stay or go?
It's a hard question to answer in general. It depends a lot what you're looking for. So take a cafe or a restaurant, or some kind of public social place. Often, if you're going out, maybe you're going out with somebody else and you want to have an interaction in public, maybe you look for a place where, on the one hand, it's a little bit lively, because that feels interesting and entertaining. On the other hand, it's quiet enough so that you can hear yourself talk. Or maybe you're going out and you just really want to sort of groove to loud music. Well, you don't need a cafe then, you need a bar with a loud band. Or maybe you want to go somewhere where you can read, but in company, right? So then you pick a quieter cafe. So it's hard to answer in general, because we have various goals that we're after. I guess to the extent I can answer it generally is, what you really want in a place is you want the ability to see it from the outside and get a sense of what it's like inside, so you can see whether it fits what you're after. Mm-hmm. And to the degree it does that, I think it will tend to pull people in, right? And again, there's a trade-off between visibility and privacy, right? You probably don't want to have your online cafe or your face-to-face cafe, for that matter, broadcasting all the words of every conversation out into the street, right? Because that is messing up the privacy. But on the other hand, if a little bit of the sound leaks out, and you can hear laughter and the clinking of glasses, and that gives you a sense of what it's like inside. So this is something I refer to as social translucence, which has to do with social cues about an online interaction leak out from it, and some cues travel farther than others. So at a distance you can hear the laughter and the clinking of glasses and so on, but you can't hear the individual conversations. When you get close enough to hear the individual conversations, chances are the people having them may notice that there's an onlooker, and they can decide whether to moderate their conversation or invite you over or whatever. So a lot of it is very much about modulating the cues that are available from an interaction. And in the physical world and face-to-face, it happens naturally. We all understand it. I hesitate to use the word intuitively, but if anything is intuitive or becomes intuitive, it's that we very quickly, in growing up and becoming socialized, understand things like how far our voices carry and what it means to make eye contact with somebody and what it means if they look away. And so we develop that repertoire of cues.
Mm-hmm. And the third question, what does it actually require for a commercial area to become self-sustaining?
Let's see. Clearly one thing it requires is people passing through. And if we're thinking a commercial area rather than an individual thing, if you've got a single shop all by itself, it had better have a very compelling product because it has to, draw people all on its own. But ideally what you want is a mix of things so that there's some people that are attracting people in, some shops, say, that are attracting people in, and then as long as the people are there, they notice other things. Oh yes, I came here to get new shoes, but I'm a bit hungry now, and there's a little cafe and it looks pleasant, so I'll pop in there, right? And so I think there's really sort of almost a commercial ecology where some things pull people in, other things, as long as people are there, they'll use. Some things might cause people to stay longer. And certainly the people who design shopping malls, understand this, right? They try to get the anchor tenant that's going to cause people to drive to the mall, right? And once they get a few of those, then they, have the other shops that people wouldn't drive 10 miles to get to.
This insight, how do you take this and then translate it into the design of the social computing system?
That's a good question. I think at one level the translation is pretty direct in that you need things that are going to draw people in. And then you need other things that, while they might not draw people, add to the experience. So for example, long ago I wrote a paper which I actually don't like very much. It's called Genre Ecologies. And the paper was, I think, very successful, but there was an example at the heart of it that I think was good, which is we looked at one instance of the Babel application, and what we could see is that, and so Babel would have multiple conversations going on in it. And there were some conversations that, for this particular situation, were important for the community using it to participate in, right? It was about work things. And so they'd come in because it was important for their jobs to be there and to be in this conversation and know what was said. But once they were there, they could, in a sense, look around. They could see that, oh, there are these other conversations. Oh, there's a conversation where people are making limericks together. That was one of the games we played that kind of spread through a number of Babels, where people would play a game where you'd make a limerick one line at a time, and so I'd do a line and somebody else would do one. So clearly no one, or at least very few people, would come to the online system just to make a limerick, but once they were there, it's kind of a fun thing to get a laugh or a smile, or you see somebody else who's in that topic already. And that was another thing about Babel, is you could not only see who was present in the chat that you were in, but you could see, oh, there are 3 people over there in that other conversation, so if I pop in there, there will be people there to chat with. So that's the kind of dynamic that you want to support.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Tom, for coming here and for sharing some of your advice and some of your guidelines and best practices. It's been very interesting. And if you want to know more about social computing, you should read the chapter Tom has written at interactiondesign.org. Thank you so much for watching.